I'm Shannon.
And I'm Mark.
And this is Dirt Sailor the Podcast. On this episode of Dirt Sailor the Podcast, we will be discussing free speech, the Chinese sun bear, and how green is the world. Happy Throat Punch Thursday.
Well, happy Throat Punch Thursday.
How are you doing on this fine day?
Doing pretty good.
So I wanted to start out by giving a shout out to two of our listeners.
Sweet. And they are?
Well, one listener is here in California, local, Randy. Thank you so much for listening.
Mr. Randy, thank you very much, buddy. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate the fact that you've listened to pretty much most of our podcasts and you really enjoy them and you give me feedback at work. That's awesome.
We greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And second shout out to Mr. Andrew in Texas.
The one and only Mr. Andrew?
The one and only Mr. Andrew. He gave up Clovis to live in Texas.
Well, I'm really sad about that, but thank you so much, Mr. Andrew. Love you and miss you.
We appreciate you.
Absolutely.
And the messages that you send me to say kind of, hey, put this on there. What about this topic?
Very cool. I have a bunch of non-topic topics today.
What are your non-topic topics?
I was kind of all over the map this week trying to discover this space here and decide what we should be talking about today. And one of them was the recent meeting with Devin Archer and the Congressional Committee behind closed doors.
Yes. And he also had an interview with Tucker Carlson. Now, I believe the interview was actually a little bit older. Or was it quite recent? Did he give the interview right at the time he's about to go give testimony?
I believe, because I watched about an hour of it last night, it was post-testimony.
Okay, post-testimony.
Or the segment that I watched was post-testimony because it was part 2. I believe it's broken into 3 to 5 parts. And that's actually what made me think about talking about Devin Archer for just a little bit, because if you look at the sum total of his parts, he's a very intellectual man. He has quite the background. He comes from a, I guess, middle class to upper middle class family. Did the traditional public high school, ended up going to Yale. Now, I do not know if he went on the scholarship. I call it foosball because it looks like foosball, but it's lacrosse. It's a pretty cool sport. He played lacrosse for 4 years, graduated with, I believe, a business or marketing degree, co-founded a business, did a lot with charity, worked over in Vietnam with, I believe it was Citibank, I want to say. Ended up getting his feet wet and getting into the type of career that he would propel himself into shortly after that. And he co-founded a company. They merged with another company, and it's all public information, so everybody can look up all the names. I'm not going to give you the name of every company. Please feel free to look them up. They're all over the net. And then he eventually hooks up with Hunter Biden. And listening to him during his interview with Tucker, the first few years, it was a decent relationship. And then once Burisma came around and all the meetings overseas and in D.C., when Hunter was put on the board of Burisma, that's when things started to go south. And shortly thereafter, that's when he realized that maybe the plan he had wasn't the best because of how things ended up playing out. And he's been sued. He's been found guilty of some crimes. He was given a year and a day in prison. And I believe they gave him that extra day so they could send him to a bigger prison other than a county lockup.
That's usually about right.
He had to pay, I believe he had to give up $24 to $30 million. And he had to pay restitution, I believe, of over $40 million. It was a large, large sum. I may be off a little bit with my numbers, but it was in the millions. And he got a sweetheart deal. It was reversed. Then it was reinstituted. So that's kind of where things went south. Very interesting story.
So I haven't paid as much attention to the Devin Archer side of things, other than that he was supposed to give testimony regarding his dealings or non-dealings between Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. But it seemed like one of the key things that I took away was everybody knew who the big guy was. Everybody knew that Hunter Biden was using his dad's name in all of these deals in order to get money out of people, including his dad, knowing that he was using his name. That was the whole brand. That was the whole operation, was that there was name and who could meet whom. So Hunter Biden being on the board of Burisma, I believe his job was to help secure a visa for one of the company heads who had previously been denied a visa. So the way they were going to do that was have a high-level party and have this individual receive an invitation. And if you put the Biden name on it, it was believed that this could potentially overcome whatever negativity he had in getting that visa.
Yes, and that was the approach, not from that angle, but that was Devin Archer's thought process when he wanted to get involved with Hunter Biden and try to get some gravitas or some bang for his buck through the federal government and through D.C., knowing that they could use Joe's name to propel themselves into different avenues and departments. So maybe they could get a military contract, or maybe they could get quicker into gas and oil, or like the Burisma thing, they could muscle people just through verbiage, not actually threatening people, but just saying, hey, it's time to do this, or, whatever verbiage they use. It's common practice back there, is what he was saying. So everybody back there knew. They've known this for years.
It seems like what they're saying, though, is that because everybody does it,
that makes it okay.
It makes it okay.
It doesn't make it okay, because there's rules, regulations, there's laws, there's taxes that you have to pay. And when you start creating companies to hide money and move money around, it's not okay. If the common citizen cannot do it legally and get away with it, a federal employee or an elected employee, an elected official, should not be allowed to do it. We know they do it. Doesn't make it right.
Absolutely.
And there's more to follow, I'm sure, because you still have his other business partner, Bob Alinsky, who has even more to say. He's going to go before the committee, and there's others. And there's more letters surfacing with Biden and some of Hunter's business partners. And now it's been found out that, yes, Joe did go to a dinner, I believe in D.C. or somewhere, where some of Hunter's business partners were there, and a person came out of the meeting and said that, they only talked about weather. They only talked about the weather. So they're talking about gas futures or firing a prosecutor, whatever the case may be. And Joe Biden goes there to this meeting, and all they talk about is the weather. I'm sorry.
And I heard it was several hours.
Well, these congressmen that were in this subcommittee meeting behind closed doors, the Dems, D's after their names, should not come out of a meeting and tell lies or try to stretch the truth.
Right. Who can, other than a meteorologist or maybe a person who's just really into the atmospheric changes that we're seeing, who talks about the weather?
Right. And see, there's code phrases and code words and things they use, so they don't outright say, yes, I'm the big guy. Yes, I have shell companies. Yes, I'm here to tell you, if you submit for that visa, I'll make sure I stamp it and you get it. They know this. They're not dumb. I think one of the things that was not counted on was Hunter's continual lapses into drug addiction and alcohol addiction, which left the family vulnerable by all these, quote, supposed laptops and all this other criminality that they have perpetrated against America over the years, and potentially are treasonous things. That's why they're trying to backpedal, and they were able to get DOJ and FBI and CIA and everybody else to help cover this up, Why, I don't know, but they've been covering it up since around 2012.
There is a right way to do things. There's a lawful way to do things. And then there's the DC way to do things. They were hoping that they could persuade someone else. Maybe they thought, hey, that person wants to work in DC. I'll remember their name. I will give them the go-ahead because they're a team player.
Right, and that's why our previous president has had so much strife, because he coined that phrase, the swamp, and drain the swamp, because they're a bunch of swamp creatures, and some of them are just downright leeches. And I don't know how you hold those people accountable, because like you said, they're so full of power, all they have to do is sick one of their agencies after you, and you're done. You're absolutely done.
Right. How many people said as soon as I didn't play ball, all of a sudden every other alphabetized agency came after me that I had never had any negative dealings with before?
Absolutely. And that's the interesting thing when you look up Hunter Biden's career and what he has to offer, what he can bring to the table. It's very interesting that everyone around him is either in prison, going to prison, is currently in court, or they're awaiting to go to trial, which tells me that he has a large net around him protecting him, because he's one that should have been prosecuted a long time ago.
Right. And even though he is technically being prosecuted right now, so you can lump him into all of his other compatriots, he is being prosecuted, but not nearly on the same level.
No.
That the others are being prosecuted. Again, getting a sweetheart deal that would have given him immunity from all crimes, and potentially even future crimes, is what the reading was by the judge. And the judge said a lot of this doesn't seem to pass constitutional muster.
Right.
And here you have someone who can not pay the IRS to the tune of 6, possibly 7 figures, and then have an unfortunate drug problem, but also go buy a gun and then toss a gun in the trash. For those of you who aren't aware of what happened with his gun charge, so he filled out the federal paperwork to get a firearm, and on the background check lied, said he'd never had an illicit drug problem, doesn't currently have an illicit drug problem. I don't remember what box that is on the form. So we talk all of the time about the background checks. Well, guess what? He did have a background check and he lied. So then he gets his gun. He's still on a drug bender. I don't recall if he explicitly tossed the gun or if Haley did into the trash can. But then there was some back and forth about finding it. And then I believe the Secret Service was even sent out to look for it once they were made aware of what was happening. And then they attempted to go get the background check form that he filled out and take it from the firearms dealer, saying that they needed it. The firearms dealer who sold the gun did not give it up and maintained it, which he's legally obligated to do, but they attempted to shield him from the consequences. And you can't just toss a gun in the trash can either.
So what the problem is here, then, what you're saying is everyone around him is an enabler.
Yes. So he committed multiple crimes with said gun. I believe there might even be pictures.
Well, you
of
know
him
what's worse
smoking
about
dope with
that?
it.
If there's somebody that works at McDonald's, I'm not just using any fast food chain, or any small lower level person that's their career, and they do something like that,
McDonald's will fire you or not even hire you.
yeah, you will go to prison, most likely. You will do some time. And what I'm getting at is Hunter Biden is what? What's his educational background?
Hunter Biden actually has a law degree, he's an attorney. He is, as we said, I believe last week, he's still in good standing with the bar in DC, and I believe in Connecticut it's lapsed.
So then if he's an attorney and he was not under the influence of drugs at the time, as he had said on that application, and he knew better because he's an attorney, he should be punished to the full extent of whatever the law is, the maximum allowed. Because he knows better. Or he should know better.
He should know better. Haley took Hunter's gun and threw it in a trash can behind a grocery store. Attempted to go fetch it later and it was gone. So the Delaware police began investigating, concerned that the trash can was across from a high school and that the missing gun could be used in a crime. So according to law enforcement officials, that was their intent on trying to make sure that it was found so that nothing else bad happened with it. This was in 2018. That the Secret Service agents then approached the owner of the store where Hunter bought the gun and asked to take the paperwork involving the sale. So it's not just look it over, not just see who had it, not just look at what kind it was. Maybe he couldn't remember the exact model or whatever. It was to take the paperwork. So when the gun store owner refused to supply the paperwork, and he was suspecting that they were trying to hide the whole deal and the missing gun, like the owner just said, he later turned it over to ATF, but not to the Secret Service, because the Secret Service shouldn't be asking for that, and he shouldn't have been afforded further protection after his father was no longer VP. That was a year and a half later. He's no longer VP. VPs are given 6 months of protected service after they leave.
Interesting how that works, because there was a report from one of his former business partners that when he was on a bender in Southern California staying at a hotel there, part of this was on the laptop. The Secret Service one day showed up to clean up after him and take care of everything for him, get him out of there, and make it look like he was never there.
Yeah, and I guess in this particular case, an older gentleman who regularly rummages through the grocery store's trash to collect recyclables found the gun, and then ultimately the gun was returned. So I don't know if I would have been charged with a crime if I took my husband's gun and tossed it in the trash, but lying on a federal firearms form, we've seen people go to jail for that. 6 figures worth of not paying your taxes intentionally. We've seen people go to jail for that.
Well, that's the thing you talk about with your equal justice under the law and the scales of justice being equal. When you have a former business partner of his, they basically paralleled. I don't know what happened with the one case where he had, well, I do. It was some type of bonds or something he was trying to get issued through an Indian.
It was Indian, yes,
it was called Indian bonds or something like that. And it ended up being some type of fraudulent transaction, according to court filings. But he lost all that money, okay, that he had to pay back plus restitution. And Hunter is deep in the mix with a bunch of other corporations as well, doing basically paralleling the exact same thing, but using the State Department and others to strong-arm people to give you money using your father's name. Yet they want to give him misdemeanor charges and drop charges and give him lifetime immunity from ever being held accountable for anything in the future. I'm surprised how well Devin Archer's able to keep his calm and not get upset over this, even though they have burned him. And he says even with Hunter's drug addiction and alcohol addiction and all the stuff that's happened, he still thinks he is a nice guy. So he has the character flaw that I have, which he only sees good in people and he doesn't see the bad side, and that's to a detriment, because at some time in your life you will get stung more than one time, but still move on and feel that you're in the right.
Definitely a difficult position to be in, or potentially he's just attempting to keep things level because of all of the pull that the Bidens have.
Or conspiracy theory. He is such a narcissist or sociopath. He is exactly like Hunter, but he does a very good job of hiding it.
That's possible too. That is absolutely possible.
I don't know him. I don't know his real character or background. I'm just assuming that what he said during these interviews is pretty close to accurate. Not the legal side of it, because he says those things because his counsel tells him to say them. But as a character person, we don't know.
So keeping with something that slightly relates to the Bidens, and it only relates because it's the Biden DOJ that is going after Trump. But
That'd be Merrick Garland?
Merrick Garland and Jack Smith, all of those individuals. So right now, one of Trump's attorneys is saying that she expects Georgia to indict him within a couple of weeks. So expect another round of indictments to come for Trump. But something else that we're seeing is that the judge in the Trump election case worked at the same law firm as Hunter Biden.
No, go figure.
Yeah, so the federal judge that has been assigned to special counsel Jack Smith's January 6th case against Donald Trump in D.C. worked at the same law firm that once employed Hunter Biden. So this judge was randomly selected to oversee the case after a grand jury indicted Trump on 4 charges over an alleged effort to overthrow the 2020 presidential election.
So I guess a sitting president that's in the midst of an election and they see and hear about a potential fraud is not allowed to use the First Amendment and have free speech and voice their opinion?
No.
Well, we'll see how that works out in the court, if the court is factually going to look at things in the proper manner. Same thing with the Georgia cases that are probably going to come forward. A lot of it's First Amendment, and a lot of it, if you listen to his voicing and you listen to some of the folks that work for him, it was about, hey, let's stop, let's take a minute, let's take a look. Votes are swapping too fast here. I'm 100,000 ahead. 99% of the votes have been tallied. Hour later, I'm behind 12,000.
Or they would say 99% of the votes are tallied. We have another 10,000 votes to go. Go to bed, wake up. Oh, they found 3 stashes of votes they completely had no idea and forgot about. And so now only, 80% of the votes are tallied and we're still going. That happened in more than one jurisdiction. I was wondering how you have no idea how many votes have been cast in many of these jurisdictions, because they would say, okay, 99%, we're almost ready. Oh, sorry. No, actually, we just found another batch 3 days later in the back of a truck that we forgot about, or in a suitcase under a table that we didn't get to. Or what else did we see? Flooded out. Areas that were flooded out and people were told to leave. And then we'll begin counting again in the morning. And as soon as people left, they started counting again, or started the count up right away.
See, so you don't know. And it should be within his right to question those, just like we had some congresswomen on the floor of the House during his election and previous elections telling him not to certify the vote. Don't trust it. It's corrupt. He didn't win. He's a cheater. Same thing what Hillary Clinton said as well. She still thinks to this day she won.
Right. She won 2016, and then somehow 2020, we go from the least secure election in 2016 to the most secure election ever, 2020. That's one thing that we're supposed to believe.
Right. So then somebody's not telling the truth. Something's not factual. And there was also Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, YouTube, news outlets hiding the Hunter Biden and the Joe Biden issues with monies coming from foreign countries, on and on and on. So, yes, the election was tainted.
On all sides, the election gets tainted. And I want to know, they said that Trump did not tell the truth when he said the election was stolen. So that's something that they're trying to say. He's a liar. The election wasn't stolen. But the legal crux of part of what they're going for is that, did he mentally know that, or did he actually think it had been stolen from him? So if he really and truly believed that it had been stolen from him, then they don't have one of the elements of the crime, where you're intentionally lying and trying to
Well, he has
say
not.
incite.
He has not changed his line since then.
No, he has not. So is lying acceptable or unacceptable? I forget which way we're supposed to believe when you have people like Biden and Hillary and albeit Trump in some cases. But Biden says, I have never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings. I don't discuss business with my son. I've never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period. And that was even while he was running for president. That was while they were doing the Q&As and asking all the questions when you had Biden and Trump up on the stage there over and over again. Never, never, never. And so now, talking about Devin Archer, a new statement gets issued from the White House where they're starting to change the lingo. He wasn't in business with his son. He wasn't in business with his brother. Not, I've never discussed it anymore. Now it's, he wasn't in business with. So you won't find Joe Biden's name on a business document. Therefore, it's all good.
Right. But if you look at his debate with Trump, he said he didn't even know what a Burisma was. Yet he had already had dinner with the president or an attorney, I don't remember the person's name, of Burisma.
Right, and he's never heard of Burisma.
Never, yes.
All he said was the sun is sunny, the clouds are cloudy, the ice cream is good, and it's my time for bed. That's what we're supposed to believe, right? For 3 hours, 2 hours,
absolutely.
however long a dinner.
And that was code.
So still going with a little bit of Biden. In all of these cases, we have, or I should say Trump in all of these cases. So we see the attorney-ish connection between the judge and Hunter Biden, that they both worked for the same firm. There's overlapping years there. She donated to Democrats. She was appointed by Obama as well, or this judge was appointed by Obama as well. So now the Justice Department prosecutor for another one, because unfortunately he has a lot of cases out on him right now, but an ex-top New York City prosecutor working with the Justice Department special counsel Jack Smith on the investigations has given large donations to campaigns for top Democrats, which also in this case include Joe Biden. So some of the veteran attorneys helping to advise Smith, and this is David Rhodey, and has overseen 2 of the indictments against Trump related to the allegations on his efforts to challenge the 2020 election and his involvement in January 6th, as well as the mishandling of classified documents. So Rhodey, who in 2022 left his role as a partner at a major law firm to join the DOJ as senior counsel in the criminal division, again, 2022. So we're getting hot and heavy with all of these investigations into Trump. He gave $5,600 to Biden's 2020 campaign and $7,000 to other Democratic causes between 2018 and 2022. So you have him actively giving funds, actively supporting Democrats, giving the max possible to Joe Biden. I believe $5,600 is the max individual donation. I might need some correction on that, but you have that. And you have him leaving his firm to go work actively for the DOJ and gets on as senior investigator against Trump.
No collusion here.
None. And I know we've talked about it before where people are free to donate to whomever they want, but I think it looks really bad. Really, really bad when you have all of these individuals who are surrounding the Trump case having donated to Biden. What I would like to see, if people were being honest, donating to Trump and then still saying, I did my investigation and it turns out, yes, he needs to be indicted. Now, maybe they don't want to out somebody who donated to Trump and is investigating him, but over and over again, it is people donating to Biden and Obama and other Democrats who are working actively on the investigation against Trump.
Tells you how corrupt it is in D.C., doesn't it?
It does.
That was one of the things I was thinking of that flew out of my head. Attorney General under Trump, one of them,
Bill Barr.
Now, he did an interview where he said that he never closed the case on Hunter Biden.
That's his claim.
Where is Hunter Biden and his dad from?
Delaware.
So why would you send that case for further review to Delaware? Was it mandatory that had to go to Delaware, which there was another person that had donated to Biden family friends, and he shelved the investigations.
So if I'm understanding some of the back dealings that are going on, not the back dealings, but the things happening in the background, is if they believe that an area, because it's federal charges, if it's federal charges, any Fed can investigate, is my understanding. So if there's a jurisdiction that's too problematic, you can have another jurisdiction look into it as a potential. However, in these cases, they are seemingly putting them in jurisdictions that they believe will be more or less beneficial to them, depending on who it is. So sending it to somebody's hometown and he's a hometown hero, going to be more beneficial to the person they're investigating. They're probably not going to do as good of a job, or as you said, shelve it.
Right.
Sending it to a location where everybody hates that person, probably going to be less beneficial to the person being investigated, and they're going to work harder and longer in wrapping up what it's about. Now, in a case where you have a sitting senator followed by the sitting VP, I guess they didn't start investigating him until Trump, although some of the allegations were that they started before Trump, so it would have been under Obama. But anyway, they sent it to jurisdictions that are very favorable to Biden and very unfavorable to Trump.
Right. They should have sent it to Texas, which tells me that Barr is either part of the swamp.
I think he is. Conspiracy theory, I think he's part of the swamp.
He's part of
the swamp. He did quit in December, but a lot of people quit right before the new turnover.
Or he felt that there was really nothing there, but it still deserved a further look. So he sent it to Delaware, but I would send nothing to the home team's home for investigation.
Agreed. So anything in Delaware and anything in D.C. area should be an automatic no for investigating representatives or elected officials. Federally elected officials shouldn't be investigated by D.C.
No, and I think that D.C. and all of these people that are in bed, that are inbred and in bed together, this thing should be broken up and spun off. I know we talked about it either the last podcast or podcast before that we should move the FBI out of there. We should move the CIA out of there, but they wouldn't be able to communicate possibly. Well, in this day and age, you can send an email and it's there in a half a second. Sometimes I think it's there before you hit send. It's time to dilute the waters there because it is just too corrupt. The interesting thing I have asked you in the past, and I ask other people, is do you believe still that America is the greatest country on earth? I asked one of my nephews that very question Saturday morning. And he told me absolutely not. And then we proceeded to talk a little bit about things we feel are wrong here and how some things can be corrected. And then we continued on our fishing trip and forgot about politics.
Probably a good thing.
It was a great thing. Great time, great family members. Love them. But I agree with him. He agrees with me. This is no longer the greatest country on earth. Maybe the population or a majority of the population is, yes. The leadership around the country is so obsessed with themselves and money that we've lost our way. We've lost our way so much so, segueing into California, we have a state house now that wants to pass a law that they can do things secretly, secretive and secret, because the population of California has no business knowing what they're doing.
Even though we have public records law, which if you try to get anything out of California is crazy. Finances, they do such a bad job. at keeping records of finances. If you FOIA money things, they tell you they can't possibly get back to you. So they have already found ways to hide what they're doing, and now they want to do more. They want to hide more.
They want to hide more and do more meetings and make more laws and regulations in secret. That's not coming from me. That came from a local news source today. So you can look it up if you'd like.
Isn't it amazing that they want to be secretive, but then they want to know everything about you and believe that you have no right to privacy?
And that's what hardcore socialist and communist countries do. That's how they run their countries.
Right. We see it in China. We've actually been seeing this swing in Australia. We talked about it over the course of the last 3 years, I believe, is when you could really see people's true colors. Even in Australia, they're trying to do away with paper money. I know it's not technically made out of paper, but they're trying to do away with paper money. Banks are regulating how much you can take out and per day how much you're allowed to spend, because they want to see exactly what you do, what your spending habits are. My conspiracy theory time, I do buy into this, where they want us to go all electronic. Some places here in California, we see it, they don't accept cash anymore. They say they're a cashless system. We already now know that Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, all of these are required to report to the government when charges totaling $600 come in, or deposits totaling $600 come in aggregate or in one single transaction. So if mom and dad want to send money to kid or any such way that you get money into your account, they're reporting that to the government. And then you want to go spend these funds. Guaranteed, if you go over your electric allotment, we are going to see in the future where they stop you from being able to get electricity, or they tell you that you're already over your allotment, so you can't go out and buy, insert whatever it is you want to buy. You see it in China already, where they have the digital currency, and then you also have basically you are the digital account, and you have to remain in good standing with society, socially, and with the government. And if you don't, they start regulating the things that you're allowed to do. And in fact, if you owe money in China and you call somebody else on the phone, it will ring to them that this person owes money. Tell them to pay their debts, to shame them into paying their debts. So I really don't believe we're that far off from this type of society that wants to make everything public. You like one tweet, you get fired because it wasn't socially acceptable. We are partially already there.
So, how old would you have been 35 years ago?
35 years ago, I would have been 3.
3? Yes. I wish we had this space, this podcast 35 years ago. Number one, that's when I was still smarter than you and your sister. Number two, I have been ringing this bell for over 35 years as a young simpleton. And I'm just a simple guy. I tell you that all the time, that the federal governments were going to go with a credit system, and they were going to issue you so many credits a month. And if you go over that, you were cut off. And everything you just eloquently said, I spoke about 35 years ago. Now, it may have been while I was drinking a couple beers and trying to act like I was really smart and intellectual.
Did you take a philosophy class once?
Partially. It was too smart for me.
A beerology class? No, beer philosophy.
Beer philosophy class. Beer 101. But I've known this is coming for a long time. And bada bing, lo and behold, here it comes. Just like, and let's talk about, we can tie this kind of into homelessness. Okay, how can we tie it into homelessness? Well, the worst city currently in California for homelessness is Oakland, California. They have open drug markets. They have people flocking from all over the country to buy their drugs in downtown Oakland from homeless, and the drug of choice right now is fentanyl. Okay. The city fathers were lying and saying that there was less than 5,000 homeless. But now the true number is, since it's blown up, 10 to 20,000. Okay. It's out of control. Crime's out of control there. They have basically lost the city of Oakland, just like they've almost lost San Francisco. And I used to love San Francisco. It used to be one of the most beautiful places ever to go over to, spend the day there, go have some clam chowder, go for a ride on a ferry out to Alcatraz, go over the Golden Gate, all the stuff that people come from all over the world to do, or they used to. And they no longer go there now because the place is out of control. The city fathers are liars. They've been lying about the truth. They've been hiding it. So until you get rid of these quasi-communists, progressives, out of these positions, this is what's going to happen there. They've taken control of the city. They're losing the city. They're taking everybody else that actually works and making them pay for what's going on within the city with no ramifications or recourse for the actual people that work and live there.
To keep going with that, just as with homelessness, undercounting, so you don't really know how many people are on the street, at least publicly. Another thing that they did in that area in San Francisco and Los Angeles was to not report actual crime, they wouldn't send the police for certain levels of crime. Petty theft, they even doubled how much you were allowed to steal before it would progress past petty theft. We used to have a $450 petty theft level, and then they raised it to $9 or $950. And so they just made things less crimey, is what I'll call it, a little less crimey. And so therefore people could get away with more, no arrest, so their statistics go down. Within the last week, there was a store that was tired of getting stolen from. The person was loading up a trash can, loading up to take out, steal as much as they could, and either the store owner or at least the workers there basically gave the thief a little bit of a beatdown and started whacking him with a stick to get him to stop, because as he was trying to leave, they were trying to stop him and he was still trying to take the stuff. So then they started whacking him with a stick. And now they're saying we are going to investigate the people who hit the thief with a stick. Not we're going to investigate the guy who was stealing. They allowed crime to happen to regular folks over and over again. People owning your corner liquor store or your corner store are generally mom and pops. Even if they have a brand name, they are usually still owned by individual families or people. And they're just supposed to be okay with not being able to stay in business and getting stolen from because the government powers that be say theft isn't that bad. There was a news reporter doing a story on a particular location. It was either a Walgreens or a CVS. And within the 30 minutes that they were there to do a report, there had been 3 thefts. And they're just supposed to let it happen.
Well, yeah, and it's like when we talk about that, as long as it doesn't happen to them being the leadership, it's not a big deal.
Right, because if I went and snatched a purse off of one of the gals' shoulders, or they're out trying to get some good eats, and I take their card that they're trying to pay with, you think that they're just going to be like, oh, well, they probably needed it more than me.
No. The leadership has a total misconception in these communities that they can fix homelessness because they can't. And the answer to them always is, well, it's because of the cost of housing and it's because of the cost of groceries, and that plays a part. But as you always propel back to, it's the drug addiction.
Yes, and stealing liquor and cigarettes is not somebody needing a loaf of bread to take to their kids.
Nope.
And all of the other things that they're out there stealing, the high dollar items. They're not trying to get a box of laundry detergent so they can go home and wash their clothes because they have nothing else that they could possibly, need. They just needed a little bit of laundry detergent. No, they're stealing a whole grocery cart full of laundry detergent because they're going to sell it to feed the addiction. They're stealing small pocket things out of different places. My husband and I, when we lived in Orange County, someone broke into our home and all they did was steal things that could be put into their pockets. They went through the medicine cabinet. They stole jewelry. and they stole cash that we had in the house.
Looking for drug money.
Drug money.
Looking for items to fence and sell to.
And then actual drugs if we had it. We didn't have any good drugs, so there wasn't anything taken out of our medicine cabinet, but they went through our medicine cabinet. They had a drug addiction. And then the officers came. They actually came to our house. They took a report. They did do a little crime lab on it, but they said that it has happened every summer for the last 3 summers. So they suspected that it was a college kid coming home and then feeding their addiction at home because it was during the summers only. It wasn't happening during the school year.
Well, doesn't it sadden you that we're getting to watch the collapse of our country right before our very eyes?
Yes. And what are we being told? Bidenomics. Bidenomics are making everything better. Yay, Bidenomics. More people have jobs. Actually, it doesn't say more people have jobs. It says more jobs have been created.
Well, I paid on average 2 years ago for diesel fuel to have fun with one of my hobbies, $2.20 a gallon. I paid 2 days ago, $5.02 a gallon.
I just fueled up. It went up 8 cents in a span of 4 days. And then I saw another 20-cent jump at a local gas station. They try to keep it pretty even keeled. They try not to go too high or too low. So sometimes the swing can be a little bit big on it if the price drops really fast. They don't catch up because they don't have as many people going through their gas station. But it went up 8 cents in the span of 4 days. And we already saw our taxes go up in July here in the state of California. We've already seen things go up. I paid $4.57 a gallon. And this is supposed to be happy Bidenomics. Bidenomics are really working. Bidenomics is getting you, insert whatever Biden and Harris, who speaks in circles. And I realized, sorry, I'm gonna jump subjects here. Listening to Kamala Harris, I realized that she would be an excellent preschool teacher because she reinforces the same words inside the sentence about 10 times.
Yes, and that's why the Democratic Party does not want to oust Joe Biden.
Because we would get Kamala Harris.
Yes.
I wonder if she would get smarter. Maybe that's how she has to speak to Joe.
So he understands.
So he understands her, and it just carries over into the rest of her speaking, and she doesn't realize it.
Little side caveat to fuel costs in California.
Okay, caveat to the caveat.
Caveat to the caveat. We have shut down 25% of the drilling for gas here in California, for crude. And if the numbers are right that I saw in the news today, we import 75% of our fuel into California from foreign entities, because the current cost of fuel in Nashville, diesel fuel, I believe, is under $3 a gallon.
Okay, caveat to the caveat to the caveat. Okay, not really, but way back when Joe Biden was trying to make us all feel better about releasing our strategic stockpiles to bring down the cost of fuel, and we still saw them go up anyway. Do you know who benefited from that?
Who?
We sold to China.
No.
So while we're importing, we're exporting. And do you think that China's buying it at a rate that they would sell to the American public?
Well, somebody that has extorted money out of China, I bet, is selling it to them at a highly discounted rate, probably darn near for free. We're probably paying them to take it.
But the reality is we are in this situation where $85,000 is the new $50,000. 2 years ago, actually, we're at more than 2.5 years now, but it took a little while. We used to be able to spend $50,000 to have a certain lifestyle. That wasn't a very high level lifestyle, but it was a decent lifestyle here in the Central Valley. Now to live that exact same lifestyle takes about $85,000 a year. So when you thought you were going to make good money and your paycheck was going up, it has all gone to the very things that just keep you coasting. We see it in our rent prices. We see it in our housing prices. We see it in the cost of buying groceries. We see it in the cost of fueling fueling up. We're being told that taxes need to go even higher because nobody's paying enough. We see it in California with the exodus. So now we have a budget crisis. Yet again, we're not making enough money. We're not bringing enough in. So their solution to that is to do bonds and get even more money. In the Portland area, they lost so much money because of the exodus. $1 billion in taxes have gone because of everything that they've been doing in Portland. People don't want to stay. People don't want to live that life.
Well, just like California, we need to go back to the Portland people and we need to tax them. We need to find out where they're living and we need to charge them an exit tax, 7%.
Right. California wants to pass, probably in secret. It's probably one of those things they secretly want to do. They want to pass a law that says you have to pay taxes for 10 years after you leave the state. 10 years. You want to exit this crap?
So I guess we better exit now before they pass the law in secret that we won't know about because it'll be a secret. So go back to Oakland real quick, the homeless. So homelessness has exploded in Oakland, making it the land of milk and fentanyl.
Well, I guess if you want to go get some fentanyl, you know where to go. That's so sad.
Well, it is. And if the President of the United States is such a caring father for his child who's 50-something, then you would think that he would want to shut down the fentanyl importation from around the world.
That and cocaine, because apparently that was also his drug of choice.
But you can't do it when you have an open border policy and you're potentially compromised by some of the deals your son has made on your behalf in and with China.
Right, got to buy those multi-million-dollar homes that you have.
Yes.
To go chill on the beach.
There was discussion about that this week, too, as to how the heck does at the time, VP make enough money to own 2 multi-million-dollar homes and all the vehicles and live the lavish lifestyle that he lives.
Right, because if you listen to some of the Biden history, according to their own claims, he mortgaged his original property because he was sending his kids to these high-level schools.
To colleges, yes.
Even they went to the Sidwell and Friends. I believe that's where Obama sent his kids to. The Obama sent their children. And that costs like $50,000 a year. So I've been listening to the audiobook of Hunter's ex-wife. And she talks about how different their lives were, how normal it was to have a suit on standby for him because he might have to go to something with Joe Biden, and the family was just in and around that all the time. But he went to university. He goes on to get his law degree. They spend and mortgage their property so they can send him. But then he turns around and does the same thing for his children too. Hunter Biden does. So his ex-wife, freely admits that she buried her head in the sand when it came to money because she just didn't want to know. So that's her claim. She just didn't know where it came from, but their kids were going to really expensive schools and colleges, the Sidwell and Friends, and university. Those cost $50,000 plus a year, and they had 3 kids. So tell me that everything was above board. Tell me that Joe Biden, being at all of his kids' soccer matches or whatever other sports matches they were going to, that he never met with somebody other than to talk about the weather. He never benefited and no money ever came into his pocket. You mortgage your properties, you're paying debt, but then all of a sudden you have multiple houses.
Well, most of America's not dumb. And just like with Hunter being on the board of that gas and oil company from the Ukraine, they were paying him $80,000 a month.
And I believe the whole firing of the prosecutor, the claim is that they were investigating Burisma, and Biden may have thought that it would come back on his son, even though his son did nothing wrong. So he just had to get the prosecutor fired, who was looking into Burisma, who was paying his son $80 whatever thousand a month.
And that's something that his former business partner said was actually the leaders of Burisma didn't think it was a good idea to fire the prosecutor later on because he had already been handled, is the statement that they had made, which means he was probably paid off. Corrupt little dudes.
Yes. Let's talk about China for just a minute here.
It's a little country that's not really so little with a bunch of Chinese people living there. And there's a lot of Americans living there too.
Yes, there are. So there is a Chinese zoo that is currently denying its sun bears are people in costume.
I saw one of the pictures. That's a person in a costume.
I believe they're standing and waving is part of what, it's not just like a awkwardly moving bear. Although there was a guy in Japan who paid 5 figures for a dog suit to live out his fantasy as a dog.
There's a name for that. There's a clinical term.
But anyway, he looks like a pretty good dog. The dog suit looks pretty real. And then all he wanted to do was walk around and get petted and act like a dog. But for the sun bear, they're saying that it is not, in fact, a person in a costume. But this bear is standing up on its hind legs and kind of putting its hand out as if to wave, like above its head, and then moving its arm, looking around at the people, the camera that's across the enclosure, and it's just standing there raising its hand. So apparently the sun bear, according to China.
Well, that one sure looks like a person to me. So, by the way, people that like to dress up like animals, they're called furries.
Yes.
They have a strong interest in anthropomorphic animals, which are animals that have human features. Furries may dress up as animals for fun, as something fetish, or as a way to escape. The origin of this subculture is unclear, but some trace it back to ancient Egypt or to Japanese cosplay. There are at least 250,000 furries in the United States.
I guess you can be anything you want to be.
You can here. Son of a gun.
Yeah. Let's talk about things that are ethical or unethical. So if you listen to Bill Barr or William Barr, he said that what the Bidens did may not seem ethical to other people, but it's not illegal. Then you have Cori Bush. An ethics complaint has been filed against her, alleging that she used government resources for campaign purposes. And so it is alleged that she violated the House rules. So this is something that I find really interesting as far as what's ethical, what's lawful, etc. So the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust, FACT, lodged a complaint against the Office of Congressional Ethics, requesting a prompt investigation into whether Bush violated rules and misused official resources from a campaign social media account. And it is alleged that she has disregarded flagrant disregard for the law, and the violations that were documented in the complaint, they call clear and obvious, and she should be investigated as such. But what's interesting to me is if you are using your official Twitter or your official letterhead or your official statements, you're giving interviews, you're giving whatever, I understand you have opinions and your opinions fall in one regard, but when you use your official position, I don't understand how some of that is only called into an ethics complaint. Like there should be lawful and unlawful. And, you violated the House rules, we're going to censure you. We're not talking about a rule that says you can't show your shoulders. You must put on a bolero or you must put on a sweater or wear long sleeves. that's not against the law. That's just rules that they have in the house for how you're supposed to dress. But when it's using your official position and it's for political gain, how is that doesn't cross into the unlawful bit? I don't understand. I guess it's rules for thee and not for me.
Yes, that's one of those things where you know the truth is right in front of you, and you know it should be unlawful, and you know they should be charged and prosecuted. And I don't believe Barr when he says that what the Bidens did was unethical, but it may not be illegal. Well, one thing that's illegal, Hunter was not registered as a foreign agent.
And they tried to push that into his plea agreement that he would get away with that.
And that's prison time for most. You don't do, and we've beat the dead horse here, you don't do multiple LLCs to move money around and give the money to family members. See, I would call all the family members. I would subpoena every one of them and ask them, okay, how much did you receive? Who did you get it from? What did you do for it?
Right, because if it's under a business, there should be a 1099 there or a W-2, and it should list on your W-2 or on a 1099, you should have to list with the IRS what you did for that work, what your business is, I believe.
Yes, because I believe it's anything over X amount of thousand that they will start looking at you to see if it's drug or illegal money. Oh, wait a minute. That's why there was 150 or more suspicious activity reports from different banks
because
about
of
this
how
very
he moved.
thing.
Yep, how he moved his money.
How the money was moved around. And one of the congressmen, Donaldson from Florida, is a finance guy. He worked with that kind of stuff. He knows what's illegal and what's not. So he's fully aware of what they were doing with the money.
And in addition, if Uncle Hunter or Brother Hunter, if he's just giving money away, we know from some of the IRS filings that what he got tagged for was trying to make his hookers employees.
Right. And from one of the letters, he was upset that he had to pay all of Dad's bills.
Right, that he was giving more to Dad than anybody else. So that seems to reason that money is flowing to everyone, but yet he had more outflow while performing more tasks because he was the one working. So if they're all getting this money, are they giving any of it back? So then that's part of the laundering. Or are they getting to keep it? And for what reason? What were they performing as a business? Now, if he was gifting them money, if it's over a certain amount, that is also reportable to the IRS. You can gift anybody money, but as soon as it goes up, and depending on the year that he was gifting the money, taxes would have to be paid on that from him.
Right, and they're thinking there's total upwards of $50 million from all these companies.
$50 million?
Who do you got?
Let's talk about freedom of speech.
There isn't much left, but go ahead.
Touched a bit on it earlier where there was, I believe, a NASCAR driver. He liked a post, and it was determined that that post was unlikable, so he is now suspended indefinitely for a post like. X, aka Twitter, Elon Musk has come out and said that if you get in trouble at work or fired at work for your postings, that they will help to back you up in court. So you have that sort of, free speech under attack. We've seen Christians get arrested for free speech recently. So the Christian youths there were Christian youths arrested for preaching at a drag show for children. And so this was in a Wisconsin town, and apparently it is illegal to preach the gospel and protest at a drag show for children. So local police arrested several youths while they were practicing their First Amendment right to engage in free speech in a public area at a public event. And so they get arrested because apparently you are not allowed to preach the gospel. And so that's in Wisconsin. Another individual, this was the third individual, another individual has been arrested in England. This time a British Army veteran, after he was arrested for silently praying outside an abortion clinic.
So this all ties right into what you just talked about 15 minutes ago about bank credits and them having monetary control over you and dictating 100% of your life to you.
Yes. And so something that happened, I believe on our last podcast, I talked about the doctor who lost his Chase Bank because they determined they didn't want to have a relationship with this individual. If we are going to a system where we are not allowed to spend cash, places have already gone cashless. You have to have a bank card, but banks are allowed to say, we don't like your speech. Social credit has been removed from you. We aren't going to do business with you. And they remove your bank account. What are you going to do?
Well, you're hosed, basically. But I guarantee if you dive into the owners, the board members, the CEOs, the COOs, the CFOs of these institutions, they are far worse than the very thing that you may have said or done. That's why all these quid pro quo laws and all this crap is created. It's for them people. It's not for us. But they're the ones that turn it around and make it mandatory that all small companies go through this training when they're the ones that are legitimately the problem.
Absolutely. And the last bit of free speech, at least here locally in Clovis, a federal appeals court has ruled that the Clovis College violated the students' free speech right. They wanted to post some flyers up on the community board, which is supposed to be open to all, but it was determined that they could not. It was the Young Americans for Freedom, and they were not allowed to post on bulletin boards because of a flyer policy that college officials relied upon to ban the students from posting. It was said to be a free speech violation, and actually a court of appeals has said that the students' rights were violated because the college said you can't post offensive language, but offensive language was something that might hurt somebody else's feelings, not actual bad inflammatory language.
You know what we have not figured out yet?
What's that? How to fly warp speed and get out of here?
What's killing all these White House chefs, former chefs? Why they're drowning?
Why are they drowning?
I don't know.
Apparently because they can't swim.
Until you see videos of them swimming.
So how many have we seen drown?
Well, one died mysteriously, but he was 78, so that could have been anything. Could have been a heart attack, could have been stroke, could have just been him being brokenhearted because he had, bad relationship. But there's 3 that have died recently.
Yes, and the individual who just died outside of Obama's house at Martha's Vineyard was the claim is a paddleboarder who was right out in the ocean. Another paddleboarder just saw him fall off his paddleboard and die. And he said he tried to get to him, couldn't find him once he got to the location where he fell off. And ultimately he died. And in conspiracy theory world, Obama was seen with a black eye and bandaged fingers like 3 days after that happened. But now that they have the body of this particular individual, they said there was no outside markings on him.
Well, if they do an autopsy, maybe he had an aneurysm. Could it be a perfectly legitimate reason? People die all the time. I'm sure as we're speaking right now, that was a chef at Benihana's is dying right now in the water in Hawaii on a paddleboard paddling around tiger sharks.
So I guess, though, an Obama biographer has actually come out and said that Obama is as insecure as Trump. I don't know if you heard this, but apparently he has just come out to speak his truth or claim truth about Obama, and that he would be that he is just as insecure and would be terrible on the Supreme Court if he were to have been or is to be nominated.
I did see that
in the future. I was just kind of surprised that anyone would come out and say anything negative about Obama.
Well, that, and why would you even consider him for a Supreme Court position?
That's another way for Obama to keep up in there, keeping the mix. I know he's an ex-president, but he gets to keep that salary and then get a Supreme Court justice position where he gets to march on for all the rights that he wants to march on for.
Right, and he's the one during his presidency that had all these kind of problems too with Fast and Furious and sending Lois Lerner after people and doing stuff with his DOJ, but nothing was ever done about any of that. Nobody was ever held to account. It was just status quo, and they let him go.
They let them all go, except Trump. Trump apparently didn't drain the swamp enough.
No. And conspiracy theory. Well, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's a thought. He runs for president. Wait, he is. He picks DeSantis as his running mate. They both get elected. Shortly thereafter, Trump steps aside. DeSantis jumps in the presidency. Then they can pick a super duper VP. And then we can hold the White House for 4, 8, 12, 16 years.
Well, that's only if they get the actual super duper VP. So the same rules would apply. Trump would have to step down at 2 years and 1 day.
Yes.
In order for DeSantis to run 2 times, which would actually then see him be almost a 10-year president.
Yes.
If Trump gets in and then immediately steps down, that's number 1 for DeSantis, and then he could run 1 more time if he did that. I would like to see Nikki Haley be there. I liked her. Tulsi Gabbard.
That's who I have more confidence in, is Tulsi Gabbard.
I've liked her. She even recently spoke up actually in support of Trump and the way they're going about getting him. Not that she's a total, Trumper or whatever, but it's really interesting who ends up speaking up for whom. And to me, it seems like those who are saying the way they're going about it is wrong are on the outskirts of the swamp. But if they're saying, yeah, he's a bad dude, go after him any way, shape, or form, they're a part of the swamp. And Lindsey Graham, I think, is a swamp monster.
I believe he is pretty disingenuous. I think he's a swamp creature as well. He's another one that's got a lot of narcissism on his side, and he can BS the best of them. I really do.
So I guess I'm going to keep on Trump for just a little bit more. But it really does seem, I guess I called it a swamp monster, but the elites who had their way of life upended are the ones a part of the swamp. The elites who have the money but just want to make sure they can keep doing stuff on the side and are outside of Washington, D.C., they may still give money to those groups or to that Democrat or that cause, but they really just want to see their money continue to grow, and they're like the elites on the outside. Trump used to be that one. Trump used to be the elite on the outside. They all wanted his money. They all wanted the donations. They all wanted to be like him. We have rap songs about wanting to be like Trump. But the instant he ran on Drain the Swamp, he was the problem.
He became a dirtbag to all of them, because I know that, I don't know it because I wasn't there, but I'm sure the sitting senator from New York ended up getting a lot of donations from Trump. And then he turns around and says, you shouldn't talk about the CIA or them guys because they have 20-some ways to get you, and they will.
Would you like to talk about going green? Segue into going green?
I think we should go green 100% right now, today.
Shut off all of our power grids, turn off all of our electricity, and just live the old school lifestyle?
Let's find some caves and let's live the way the supposed caveman did. Let's do it.
So we've been hearing a lot about going green. California's going green as fast and furiously. We're going green with our cars. We're going all electric. We don't really care about the children who are, digging out the cobalt for us to have the things that we have, but we're going green. And we want more wind turbines, except at Martha's Vineyard, because they look ugly. So please put them in the poor folk areas. Well, now, come to find out, another worldwide hypocrite. So Scotland They wanted to put up a bunch of wind turbines. They have some pretty hefty wind up that way. They thought the way to go green and be super green and get our power from green energy is to have wind turbines. So what do to make sure that they can have wind turbines? They have chopped down almost 16 million trees since the year 2000, since they started this crusade to go green. They have chopped down almost 16 million trees so they can have the land for their eco-ness.
Boy, they're true green people, aren't they? Man, the darn trees. Way to go. Cut them down, kill them. Then put a fake tree up in its place.
Yep, and then those same people are going to be flying around using up all that lovely fuel to tell other people how they should go green by doing the exact same things that kind of don't make them seem too green.
So doesn't a tree absorb carbon dioxide?
Yes.
So then if you cut all the trees down, then your CO numbers, CO2 numbers will increase because there's no scrubbing effect there. So you in turn create another issue by having high CO2s because you've cut all the trees down. So there's some brilliant people.
Yes. Same brilliant people who are telling us that the sea levels are rising. So they buy oceanfront property right at sea level 2 times. Over and over, these same people, I'm not saying that our climate isn't changing, don't read into it that way, but perhaps we are changing our climate while attempting to change our climate. And we are just that dumb because felling 16 million trees is going to have some effect.
It's going to have a very negative effect on that neck of the woods.
Neck of the woods, yes.
So and it's interesting because I just had a discussion with my nephew about something similar to this weekend. Him and his family, your cousins, just went on a vacation, and they were up at a glacier that they went on a tour, and a tour guide has been doing these tours for multiple years and made the statement to them that he has never seen so much of a decline in the glacier in his many years there, that there's definitely something going on. And him and I, him being the nephew, both agreed that yes, there is some kind of global phenomenon going on. And yes, we did pump and have pumped a lot of CO2 into the air, probably more in the last 10 years than a lot of years previous. But I'm still under the assumption in my mind that Mother Earth makes her own decisions along the way. And she is supposedly millions of years old. And we've only been tracking her for a couple hundred, weather-wise, maybe not even that long. So like you and I say, we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what she's capable of. She may be shedding things right now and doing what she feels she needs to do to right this ship.
One of the claims, whether it's Mother Nature or us or both, one of the claims is that all of our taking of water out of the ground has shifted our axis, which then causes us to heat in different areas and cool in different areas that we didn't do before. And I know you've also talked about removing oil from the ground.
Yes, and I talked about that with your cousin this weekend, that my thought is that's Mother Earth's cooling fluid, and we're removing it, and that's part of what's causing, I don't know about an axis tilt, but a rise in actual Earth temperatures. You know, goes back to that thing, what happened to the Mayans, what happened to the Incas, you know, all those folks. We don't know what we don't know.
This has been a podcast produced and edited by the Dirt Sailor Duo. Mark and Shannon are a father-daughter team who both served in the United States Navy. This production is protected by copyright laws. Until next time, anchors away.